Hello everyone. So basically, after I made a video previously about how there's a huge gap in potency between budget and best in slot, I got to thinking about power creep in NGS and how it's changed over the years. This video might repeat some stuff talked about previously, but I feel there's still a bit more to talk about regarding this subject. Now, obviously I won't go over the solution to this because I already did that in the previous video I made covering a similar topic. This video will kind of just exist to explain how the gap in power overall has changed over the 3 years that NGS has been running. First off though, I want to compare base to NGS because I do think it's worth bringing this up just as a comparison of how different gear works. So basically in base PSO2, the fixes were all additive. This means that aside from a few fixes which were called the phrase line of affixes, you would gain an additive amount of mel, tech, range, defense, or HP, whatever. Anyways, these were all per affix. Phrase affixes were different because they gave percent base damage for fulfilling certain conditions. Like for example, phrase weak, giving you a percent base damage bonus based on hitting the elemental weakness of the enemy, or phrase decay, which gained a 5% damage increase from hitting an enemy afflicted by gelin. For every plus 60 to a stat you would effectively gain 1% more damage or defense or whatever. By the end of base, you had over 300 attack and close to 400 per unit, assuming you had Grack, which means you weren't really gaining a huge DPS overall from being fully decked out on your units. Your damage primarily came from weapons which have much higher base attack than what we currently have in NGS. Forgive me if I get this wrong because it's been a while since I've actually looked at my base PSO2 gear, but the Claws weapons had... it was either the high end of the 2000s or a bit over 3000, and that's compared to like how we've got like a bit over 1200 in NGS for like our current weapons. Anyways, compare this to NGS where every 1% more potency is actually the equivalent of around 3% more potency, and every small jump of damage we get in NGS is actually much bigger than it may initially seem, which it basically makes the 0.5 or 1% boost pretty substantial when you add that to all 3 units or even just 3 units plus a weapon. This means that there's a much stronger emphasis on affixes and to the same extent gear in NGS compared to base. For reference, the hardest solo content in base PSO2, which was Def 100 Sodom, can be cleared with no units on some classes like Luster, for example. The weapons are just that powerful on their own to where units don't really provide that much. I mean, you know, Luster's also pretty broken, so that's a completely different story, but that doesn't change the fact that you can complete the content with no units whatsoever because their overall impact is pretty minimal when you factor in player skill and just how powerful weapons are. Anyways, if you fast forward to NGS and you took off all of your units and let's say you wanted to solo Malignant Darkfall's Solace, you'd pretty much do abysmal damage that would make even a player from 2021 laugh at you, and you probably wouldn't even deal 50% of Solace's HP in the 15 minutes given. So we've done that comparison out of the way, let's actually talk about power creep in NGS. First off, we'll start at the beginning and make our way down because we can just do that. Anyway, starting at Alio, which was basically release NGS, the max potency you could achieve by the end was around 42%, and the best units the player used were Geent units and Evoco weapons. Now, I could go on and on about Geent armor because holy crap, people hated wearing Geent armor because apparently getting frozen by a generic lizard that dies in one hit is something to be scared of, but whatever. While Evoco weapons weren't out immediately, pretty much every weapon that was released at the beginning of the game is mostly around the same, and it didn't really matter anyways because all you really had to use it on were cocoons and urgent quests, and purple triggers weren't even out for like the first few months of NGS. The first big jump was with the elemental weapons, most notably the Flamel weapon series, which was a rarity above the usual elemental weapons. Elemental weapons are usually gimped by being lower rarity and having lower potency and base attack, but Flamel didn't have the lower base attack that the other elemental weapons have, which made it a bit stronger than pretty much any other option we had for a bit. Anyways, nobody really cares about Alio, let's move on. The first big jump in Retum was with the Chase Weapon Series Relic, and it wasn't too big of a jump, mostly because the Griaga weapon series, which was also new, was much easier to get a Fixa on, and putting Fixa attack on Griga made it more on par with a blank Relic. So there really wasn't too big of a gap, and getting a Fixa Relic was like, good luck. Anyways, by the time Cinquem came out, potency on gear had moved up to around 62 to 64% by Retham's end. So it was roughly a bit over a 20% increase from Alio. Moving to Kavaris was our first big jump in base attack and potency. Both 5-star and 6-star options were immediately eclipsed by the base attack of the 7-star Kaiser and Rugged weapon series, which boasted higher base attack in exchange for the 50% variance we know today. Kaiser would later be slightly invalidated by the Obsidia weapon series, and the max potency jumped to around 94 to 96%. By the end of Kavaris, with the introduction of Gigas 4 caps in the higher tiers of Addy, it was also around this time, if it wasn't obvious, we got the rest of the 4th tier of generic affixes, which had around 3% potency each. Before this, we only really had tier 3 caps, but also by this time not every tier 4 cap was actually released. I believe Alt Secreta 4 was a Stia drop. Anyways, we then move on to Stia, where max potency moved to around 111%. By the time Aegis had first released and we got Halfanal, there was also that one moment in time where the elemental ice weapons were stronger than the craftable Kukolfis weapon series, because, the only relevant content was Stia purples, which meant ice elemental weapons were actually good. Anyways, both of those were completely outclassed by the Neos Australian and Neos Justinian weapon series, and we got Halfanal. Did I already mention that? I'm stupid and I can't remember. Anyways, this is where, of course, best in slot capsules started to come out, and we started to make a lot larger jumps instead of mostly incremental jumps. From the time Aegis came out to Solus rank 1, we got Halfanal, Gladiasol, Hyel Domina, and Gigas Maste. This put max potency to around 162%, I believe. Fast forward to Malignant Aegis, and we move up to around 178% range, with Dalian moving us up to around 182%. Malignant Darkfall Solus moved us up to around 253%, and it was pretty much around the same area for Malignant Darkfall's Dalian. Basically, from the 7th affix slot releasing onward, the jump in power we've gotten is far bigger than anything we've gotten in prior, which is why I stopped listing units and weapons, because the damage we got from them was pretty minimal compared to the gain in power we were getting from affixes. This, of course, puts us at today, where the highest best in slot goes to around 303 to 305% potency, which is roughly over 15% more from when Malignant Solus released at first. Overall, we can safely say affixes being multiplicative is the main reason for our potency getting so high. This isn't exactly a bad thing, and more so the means of acquiring a power, but that is of course nothing new. There's a part of me that wonders how much higher we'll go, and if we'll one day get to affixes that are roughly on par with the Deathiogs in terms of power, which is like 7% potency per affix. This remains to be seen, of course, but who knows in the distant future, if at all, it will happen. Anyways, something that also should be noted is that numbers in base PSO2 were also far larger than what we have now, so I think the reason why our numbers aren't that high is probably because they... what's the word I'm looking for? They've condensed the numbers. So that's likely what I'm assuming. With that said, that's mostly all there is to cover about the power creep history in NGS. Obviously, there's still a bunch of smaller things in between, but if I did that, this video would take forever, and I'm pretty sure nobody wants that. I won't really cover classes or anything either, because I can really only speak for Bouncer as far as classes go. Of course, if I also missed something, please feel free to mention so in the comments. If there's any topic you'd also like to see me cover in the future, please mention that in the comments as well. I pretty much just go off of my own ideas of making specific topic videos, but I'm open to viewers too, provided I can actually make something from it. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.